Have you ever wondered if the very thing that feels like abandonment might actually be preparation? Tonight, as countless souls lie awake questioning why their prayers seem to echo back empty, why doors remain closed despite their faithfulness, why restoration feels like a distant promise rather than an approaching reality, there's something stirring in the spiritual realm that most cannot see. You thought the silence meant God had forgotten your name, but what if that silence wasn't absence at all? What if it was the sound of heaven orchestrating something so profound that your current perspective simply cannot contain its magnitude? The nights have been long, haven't they? Those moments when you've whispered into the darkness, wondering if anyone beyond the ceiling truly hears your heart breaking. You've watched others receive what you've been praying for, celebrated their victories while quietly nursing your own wounds. The questions multiply in the quiet hours. Why them and not me? How much longer must I wait? Have I somehow disqualified myself from receiving what I've lost? There's something uniquely painful about hoping for restoration when everything around you suggests permanence in your loss. Your mind replays the moments when things fell apart, analyzing every decision, every word, every path not taken. The enemy whispers that perhaps this is simply your portion, that some losses are meant to be final, that some dreams are meant to remain buried. But deep in your spirit, something refuses to accept that narrative. Something keeps reminding you that the God you serve is not a God of permanent endings, but of divine new beginnings. Would you still trust divine timing if it meant waiting longer than you ever imagined possible? This question cuts to the very core of faith itself, because restoration rarely arrives on our timeline or in the package we expected. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or follow the logical progression we've mapped out in our minds. Instead, it often begins in the most unexpected moments, through the most unlikely circumstances, when we've finally stopped striving and started surrendering. Maybe that's why the waiting has felt so intense lately. Maybe that's why certain doors have remained firmly closed despite your persistent knocking. Maybe that's why relationships have ended, opportunities have dissolved, and dreams have seemed to crumble before your eyes. Not because heaven has abandoned your story, but because something far greater is being constructed in the spiritual realm. Something that requires a foundation strong enough to support a blessing larger than what you originally lost. Sometimes God allows everything to fall apart so He can rebuild from a place of deeper truth. The structure you thought was permanent was actually temporary scaffolding. The relationships you thought were forever were actually stepping stones. The dreams you thought were your destiny were actually preparation for something that more perfectly aligns with His heart for your life. This isn't punishment disguised as process. This is love expressed through divine wisdom that sees beyond your current season into the fullness of what He's prepared for you. Consider how restoration works in the natural world. Before spring can emerge, winter must complete its work. The ground must be frozen, the old growth must die back, and everything must appear lifeless for months. But beneath that seemingly barren surface, roots are strengthening, seeds are preparing, and life is gathering energy for an explosion of new growth that will surpass anything the previous season produced. The waiting isn't wasted time, it's gestation time. It's the sacred space where miracles take shape. Our minds crave immediate resolution, instant gratification, and linear progress. But spiritual restoration operates on heaven's timeline, which often feels maddeningly slow to our earthbound perspective. Faith teaches us to sit with uncertainty until peace becomes our anchor. It trains our hearts to recognize divine movement even when our circumstances suggest stagnation. It develops our capacity to trust that what feels like delay is actually divine alignment, preparing to release something beautiful beyond our imagination. Maybe the restoration you've been praying for was never about returning to what you had before. Maybe it was about becoming someone who could steward something far greater. Maybe those closed doors weren't rejections, but redirections toward opportunities that better match the person you're becoming through this process. Maybe the relationships that ended needed to end so your heart would have space for connections that truly honor the sacred nature of who you are. There's profound psychological wisdom in how God orchestrates restoration. He doesn't simply return what was lost. He transforms our capacity to receive and maintain what He wants to give. The person who lost something and immediately received it back might repeat the same patterns that led to the original loss. But the person who has been refined through the waiting, strengthened through the struggle, and deepened through the disappointment, emerges with wisdom that can protect and multiply whatever restoration brings. When restoration finally arrives, it rarely looks exactly like what you expected, but it always exceeds what you could have imagined. It comes with a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy that feels unshakable, and a sense of divine timing so perfect that you finally understand why nothing else worked out before. You realize that every closed door was protecting you from settling for less than what heaven had in mind. Every delay was allowing space for growth that would be essential for stewarding your restoration well. The signs are already beginning to manifest for many of you. That unexplained peace in the midst of uncertainty. Those unexpected opportunities that seem to align perfectly with your hidden dreams. Those divine appointments that feel too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Those moments when you sense heaven leaning in close, whispering that your season of preparation is nearly complete. One day, you'll look back on this waiting season and recognize it as the most crucial chapter of your story. You'll see how every tear watered the soil of your soul, how every disappointment removed what was never meant to remain, and how every moment of silence was actually the sound of your roots growing deeper into divine love. The restoration that's coming won't just return what you lost. It will establish something eternal that can never be taken away again. Tonight, you might find yourself questioning whether the very struggles that seem to be breaking you apart are actually the gentle hands of heaven putting you back together in a way that will never fall apart again. You've been carrying this weight for so long that it feels like a permanent part of who you are. The loss, the disappointment, the dreams that seem to dissolve just when you could almost touch them. But what if I told you that the very intensity of what you've been experiencing is proportional to the magnitude of what's being prepared for you? There's something profound happening in the space between your last prayer and your next breath. While you've been wondering if heaven has gone silent, the truth is that silence often precedes the most extraordinary movements of divine love. Consider how a symphony begins not with noise, but with a moment of perfect stillness before the first note transforms everything that follows. Your life is approaching that moment, that sacred pause before the music begins. The restoration that's coming won't just replace what you lost. It will reveal why you had to lose certain things in the first place. Sometimes what we think is our greatest treasure is actually what's preventing us from receiving our greatest blessing. Sometimes the relationship that ended, the opportunity that slipped away, or the door that closed was heaven's way of redirecting your steps toward something that aligns more perfectly with the person you're becoming. You see, restoration in the spiritual realm operates differently than repair in the physical world. When we fix something that's broken, we try to make it exactly like it was before. But when God restores, He doesn't just return you to your former state. He elevates you to a place you've never been before. He doesn't just heal the wound. He makes you stronger at the point where you were once weakest. He doesn't just replace what was lost. He multiplies what remains. If this message found you in your season of waiting, take it as a gentle whisper that your story isn't over. Your restoration is closer than you think. Write Amen in the comments if you felt this truth in your spirit, and let's continue walking this journey of faith together.